Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us. I'm Sharon Prince, CEO and founder of Grace Farms Foundation, which recently launched the Grace Farms Relief Fund for Connecticut and the Grace Farms Alliance Against COVID-19. So I'm joined here this afternoon by Dr. Theresa, who you just may have seen, a chief anesthesiologist with 20 years of experience, who volunteered to be repurposed to the COVID unit at St. Vincent's Medical Center, and will share her psychological as well as physical effects of receiving life-saving PPE, the observations that she's seen. And then also, we're joined by Brian O'Flynn, who is the Director of Global Commercial Marketing at Hamilton Beach Brands, and also Rod Katabi, former head of Connecticut's Homeland Security Investigations and our foundation's Chief Accountability Officer and Justice Initiative Director, as well as Chelsea Thatcher, our foundation's CMO, who will be receiving and sharing your questions in the Zoom chat. And just so you know, that will happen in about a half an hour. So this will be a good opportunity on our lunch breaks to, if you want to still pass along questions to her, she'll be receiving those. So for those of you whom have been to Grace Farms, when we convene to advance initiatives in the areas of nature, arts, justice, community, and faith, we aim for new actionable outcomes and collaborations for good. So the breadth of what we've been able to accomplish together using our foundation's interdisciplinary model is significant. We've provided a framework now by having this groundwork already in place over the last 4.5 years to expediently be able now to procure, donate, and deliver more than 1.2 million PPE to our healthcare workers in real time, and more than 10,000 meals to families in need. So committing to deliver and actually delivering is harrowing when the stakes are as high as procuring life-saving N95 respirators in this global pandemic. Fairfield, New Haven, and Hartford counties in Connecticut all rank among the highest in the country, 25 of the US counties with the most coronavirus-linked deaths, according to the data from Johns Hopkins University. And we all saw weeks passing with no N95s in sight for our healthcare workers in frontline, risking their lives each hour. And then they were also, for many of you have seen too, directed to maybe even escalate that risk by reusing their vital N95 respirator masks up to 1 week at a stretch. On March 17th, I made a commitment on a Zoom call with the residents of the town of New Canaan to deliver this essential medical armor. And I was going to do that in bulk because what we found is that the smaller entities or those who cannot buy directly overseas could not buy in bulk. So we decided to do that here in Fairfield County as a stopgap measure. And you can see here, this is our team. We closed to the public on March 9th. And then our team quickly and nimbly turned our entire interdisciplinary humanitarian center to become a donation and delivery hub for both medical and food supplies and relief. So it turned out on April 2nd, we were the first to deliver and donate mass quantities of N95 respirators. And it's been the experiences of people like Chief Anesthesiologist, Dr. Theresa and her COVID unit at St. Vincent's, and the hundreds, and you'll see her there on the right. This is a photo of them receiving supplies on March 30th, which is really pretty quickly once we made that commitment. So it was not only her, but hundreds of stories and requests we've now seen and heard through our social media channel and our online PPE request form. So all of this has really motivated us to provide fresh equipment for those on the front lines as they risk their lives for ours. And this is an image that you took, Dr. Bowling. If you go back to that, that is on it's on March 30th in your COVID unit. And just the delight you can see in having that PPE, I hope you'll be able to express about that day and what's happened since. So thank you, Theresa, for joining us. You have courageously volunteered to be repurposed to the COVID unit. So I'd love for you to be able to share your experiences with us.
Good morning or good afternoon, Sharon. Thanks so much for giving me the opportunity again to share my experience as an anesthesiologist and a first responder during this COVID crisis. I want to share with you my emotional, psychological, and physical roller coaster that this has really been this period of time. It began with, the information coming out of China about this devastating virus, but we were getting mixed messages until it hit Italy, where we have a lot of colleagues we trust that were passing on photos and information on blogs about the lack of PPE and healthcare providers getting sick and dying. And then this distributive justice of having to decide when patients are going to get care or not get care because there was limited resources. It reminds me of that picture of the tsunami in Thailand where there was this quiet before the storm when the ocean went out. And we now know that was just the beginning of a devastating event that was about to occur. And we felt the same way as we were developing what's now discussed as a pre-traumatic stress disorder, where you're anticipating this war with this virus and what that's going to look like and if you're going to have adequate equipment. Of course, New York City was then hit next, and then the devastation that went on there, and it was moving north to Connecticut. I initially was volunteered to be on the COVID intubation team and to be repurposed for the intensive care unit at St. Vincent's Medical Center. Anesthesiologists are airway experts. We put breathing tubes in patients every single day. So the first responders are responsible for putting those breathing tubes because the patients do present with respiratory distress, as you're well aware. When I volunteered, I spent the day orientating in the overflow unit in the emergency department that was set up as a temporary ICU for COVID patients. And at this time, Netflix was running all of these pandemic movies. So I actually watched Contagion with Dustin Hoffman and Rene Russo. Probably not the smartest thing to do, but I did it. And I got to the unit and I felt like I was in the middle of a movie set. There was tapes up against the doors, hazard tapes, do not enter without an N95. You went in there and our colleagues were dressed just like you saw that picture a second ago with what's called the PAPR, which is an enclosed system where air is compressed and put into the system via a belt on your waist. That's exactly there. That's my colleague, Allison Peel, who is a young woman who has a 1-year-old baby, and she volunteered to be on this team, probably put the most amount of hours in that. She's also got what you see is a gown on top of that PAPR, 2 sets of gloves, and underneath all of that has a white impervious jumpsuit, many of which were donated by Grace Farms Foundation, that goes from head to toe. In fact, she's got a hood underneath that helmet, a hat on top of that, a N95 mask below that blue mask, and of course the headgear, the PAPR on top of that. So you can imagine the heat that's generated in there. Limited visibility, almost like you have blinders on your side. We clean the mask with disinfectant, which begins a foggy mask over that. So you get all of that on. It's called the donning process before you enter the room. Then you go into the room where you are in direct fire with the virus, because we do put the breathing tube in, and that's when the virus is aerosolized. Kind of the same concept of when you see dust in a room through the air when the sun shines, exactly that concept. So we put the breathing tube in, and historically my job in an operating room is to do that every single day. And the last thing I say to a patient when they're going off to sleep is, don't worry, you're going to be fine. We do this every single day. The next thing you know, you're going to wake up and be in the recovery room. But I knew that really wasn't the case. And this was part of the emotional roller coaster we experienced, because I knew it was likely at this stage of the game and at this stage in the course of the illness that with multiple medical problems and an older patient, in all likelihood, they were not going to wake up. And this was going to be the last thing they saw before they died. So we went into this unit. That was my first experience. We put the breathing tube in. It was hard. It was hot. It was loud from the compressed air. You couldn't see everything. So what was normally second nature now became a painstaking experience. The whole process takes about an hour in the room. By you put intravenous lines in the neck to access large vessels to give medication. lines in their arterial arteries to monitor their blood pressure beat by beat. So the doffing process, taking off the equipment, is where you can really be contaminated, and that's the scary process. Where you remove all this equipment, and during it, you're thinking, did I wash my hands? Did I contaminate my head? And then early on, they were already asking us to save gowns and rewashing them, and rewashing the headgear and the fear that goes along with that. So we left that patient, and immediately there was another one. So there was no downtime. You moved to the next one. And then the surreal part of it is because on all the windows, they were minimizing coming in and out of the rooms. In crayon, it was written COVID positive, do not resuscitate. Under a person under investigation, PUI. And so you'd walk down this hallway, and then you do the next one. And this first patient I had done was a 40-year-old woman who we had taken care of. And they'd made her a DNR. She'd come into the hospital the day before, walking and talking. And so we watched her die, which is so counterintuitive for what we normally do. So I left this unit at the end of the first day, and I reconsidered that I had volunteered. I have a 14-year-old son who was about to be 15. Would I self-quarantine at home and not hug him on his birthday? My mother's got stage 4 cancer. Was I going to deal with that and not see her for some time and possibly limited time? So I slept on it. And in the morning I woke up and it was very clear I should do this. And the way I approached that was, it was my duty as a doctor, number one. And number two, I knew I had adequate gear. I'd been in contact with Sharon at that point, and she assured me, and you saw those pictures, they started being delivered at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night by New Canaan Fire Department, cases and cases and cases of impervious gowns and N95 masks. And there was even a sign on the door, please reuse your N95 mask. And they had brown lunch bags with people's names written in marker to reuse their mask for the next day. And I went in there, I said, you don't have to do this. We have ample supplies in this hospital, and we're lucky. So be careful about using your gear. Don't be wasteful, but know that you'll have a fresh mask every single day. That is without question. And so it gave me comfort knowing that I was protected, and in all likelihood, I was more apt to get the virus at the grocery store than I was at work. And that gave me a sense of comfort to allow myself to act outside of my comfort zone, to feel safe and know my family was safe. So for that, I am very, very grateful. Thank you.
Well, as you can see, first of all, everyone, I just think you need to give you a round of applause. You just don't even understand at least I didn't understand all of all that went into not only for you to be personally protected, but what it means to be able to deliver the health care that you've always been able to, and also for your family. I mean, there were so many layers to that once, even before, I wanted to be able to commit to be able to provide that fresh mask and fresh respirator for you at every single shift. And then when you slowly over time, it learned the breadth of the impact and to the whole, to the whole hospital, to your patients, the care. So it made us even more fervent in our mission to really deliver. And I'll describe how we did, but you can see, everyone here, you can really see why having that window into understanding right there in ICU unit, how it enabled us and really inspired us all to be able to go, to come right alongside you. You're risking much more than we are to try to figure this out. And we're just internally, everybody is just ever grateful for you to be able to take the risk and to see you healthy, and to see all those, there's so many stories actually of people who have been able to recover, and for your team also to know that they're all protected. I think this is all part of being a community, just doing our part, right? So we're doing the much less part of it. See, we talk about how it should all be taken in light of really not only the heroics, but the courage that you all have. So thank you, Theresa, and to all of your team who've been so wonderful really at St. Vincent's in Bridgeport. So if we could, I really can't do this to all of us, but for all of us, a big thank you, a big thank you.
Thank you.
So if you have to hop off, I'll understand, Theresa, if you have to get rolling with your limited time, but we will have a little bit of time at the end to be able to field questions. So this, to me, has been our inspiration, for the entire time. And maybe I could go over a little bit of why we were put in this situation. The reasons why hospitals and organizations across the state are in this situation is because COVID-19, the crisis, has forced states in each town to navigate the complexity of global supply chains on their own. And the state has been distributing to PPE, the PPE to hospitals, municipalities, and hundreds of nonprofit organizations across the state. But it's the procurement arm that has been gridlocked in competition for these supplies. Since March 22nd, the state has placed 20 orders with US suppliers. They cannot be, they're not able to take the risk of ordering directly overseas. Many are actually new at this procurement business, and many of these orders have not been fulfilled. We can see here that Governor Ned Lamont in Connecticut, who's been really doing a lot to try to shore up supplies, he still called it a mess. And he did, though, kindly acknowledge that Grace Farms, our contributions have been a godsend, particularly in terms of the N95 respirator mask gap. So in that case, we donated 125,000 gloves, and then we've been helping to supply at cost other N95s for them as well. So back in March, we set our operation in motion and quickly initiated this Grace Farms Relief Fund. And you can see there's 3 prongs: the medical relief supply that we'll talk a little more about, the food relief, and also we helped to co-fund a predictive triage platform, a data software program to help provide the knowledge of where and what the level of urgency is, with not only statewide but nationwide. So while our emergency food relief has been steadily increasing from 500 meals per week to 2,000, we too were burned by this round-the-clock chasing after the N95 mirages. So I quickly found that heralded deals did not solve this pressing problem, but virtual handshake deals with several businesswomen did. And with time ticking, and really, like I said, they were mirages, we weren't really able to ascertain what we thought we could in bulk. So I turned to my sister and brother-in-law, who are directors at Hamilton Beach Brands in Richmond, to introduce me to any of their suppliers in China. Lo and behold, one of the manufacturers, XJ Group, added capacity by sourcing PPE at the time of our request. And at the same time, China lifted their domestic PPE supply policy. So I immediately placed my first order of 100,000 N95 NEOSH respirators and directly wired $150,000. That was when N95 masks were $1.50 without shipping and without price gouging and so forth. So I'll let Brian explain this, but it escalated over time to $2, $3, and $4, although the bulk market rate that we saw at the same time was about double. So this relationship with Maggie Yao at XJ Group became one of our now 3 established and trusted supply chains and suppliers. The other 2 are with relationships with other savvy female Chinese American businesswomen locally. So Brian, you're the director of global commercial marketing at Hamilton Beach, and here to join us. So thank you for doing that this afternoon. You have been copied on quite a few of our emails with XJ Group, actually every one. In essence, that has replaced what I would call a typical contract, even in a very rudimentary way, but very effective. So despite the price gouging, scamming, and gray markets for PPE, how have you seen overseas suppliers rise to the occasion?
Sure, thanks, Sharon. It's been pretty amazing how there's been a deficit of trust in some places where it's hard, like you described the mirages, But I think there's been trust on both sides. So we're fortunate that we were able to put you in touch with a supplier that we've been working with for maybe 15 years. So I think that enabled Grace Farms Foundation to be able to trust that supplier. So we have probably 100 inspectors on the ground that are both developing suppliers and also inspecting. So we have a large infrastructure and footprint. So I think being able to provide trust was important, but also to see the suppliers rise to the occasion. So in terms of them, putting their necks on the line, I think there was one particular time where there was an order where the supplier fronted $300,000 of their own money to make sure that that the foundation could act quickly. So I think it was really great to see both putting Grace Farms Foundation in touch with suppliers that had trust, but also then seeing them respond in kind.
Right. So Brian, you might remember too, early on, that they would, that Maggie and her team, there's about 4 or 5 of them as well, that would alert us if there's going to be a price increase.
Right. So, I mean, it was incredibly fluid. So what would be a price of X one day might turn into a price of 3X the next day. And I think also having the bravery to respond quickly was really important. So I remember when you asked if you could be set up as a supplier with Hamilton Beach in the next
I did try.
In the next 30 minutes. And then I think when I told you it's typically a 4-day process, then you moved faster.
I said, no, that we don't have 4 days. Exactly.
Yeah.
And it did, but if you remember at that time, it was harrowing, right? The time was of the essence. And I really appreciate that Maggie was able to respond accordingly. We were working through the night, not only through our night, but quite often through their night. She was right. So it was a pretty round the clock effort. They never had at all a 9-to-5 modality. I mean, she was working
Absolutely.
With us, right, in real time.
Yeah, I think they responded when they saw Grace Farms Foundation working in their time zone. Then it was pretty incredible that they did the same thing almost immediately.
They did, right?
That's great.
And also, and the other part about it was being able to. So part of the risk we took is to be able to. To go ahead and pay in full without inspection, right? That's also something you would do. You normally would maybe even at 50%, and then when you received it, when it landed, you would inspect it. But like you described, you're having your own inspectors on the ground and ensuring the validity of a supply chain was also critical to
Absolutely.
being able to do that. And so, while this was an unorthodox method, it was really, actually, to me, it seemed like a very, must have been before the age of many lawyers and contracts, right? I think it really broke through what is really the spirit of humanity. There was many times they understood exactly what we were trying to do. And there was never a moment, I think there was one moment there was a price confirmation. No, it wasn't that. It wasn't X. It was 30 cents less.
Yeah.
So I think that there is, and also just the timing and the delivery methodologies. We also helped establish a freight forwarder there that we could then work with, that Rod will talk about later could work with. Yeah. So it was, and then we can do our part of it to usher it in.
And lives were saved. I mean, as a result.
Is exactly. So thank you, Brian. You know that those SOS calls are going to come again. They're going to come again. So thank you so much. And it continues. We have orders in right now that we're continuing to bring in, and really appreciated the having that, appreciate seeing how trust relationships matter across these at this time, and how they will continue to matter. So thank you again, Brian.
Absolutely.
All right, so stay on board. There might be if you can, we might have some other questions for you. So just to recap, the demand for the supplies and the relief has been much more than we anticipated. We did think this would be a couple-week, very localized effort, or at least in that area within Connecticut. But we've seen that the initial funds that we raised of 2.5 million, we were able to increase up to 2.6, and added to that $800,000 in in-kind donations. And these PPE donations have been sent by Ningxia Foundation in China and our sister state of 34 years, the province of Shandong. So again, having that trusted relationship and good relationships in China have been really, really fruitful. 100% of our fund has been spent to try to keep pace with the need, which continues to expand, including many more families that we expect will be needing food relief, even when the economic hardship, we'll be facing that probably for quite some time. So it has been super clear too that funds alone cannot solve humanitarian crises. It does take our entire community, and you cannot just buy these life-saving essentials and expect that it will get into the hands of those who need it. So it takes our entire community using their wherewithal to make it happen, and quickly too. So this has been essentially our differentiator in our operation, because we've been able to thankfully have so many people step up, and we are overseeing this process of procurement with a real boots on the ground delivery method. This is the New Canaan Fire Department. They pretty incredible. They have jumped in to make deliveries after their own work day at 5 p.m. each day, and often they'll be delivering to 11 p.m. or later. This includes also, we have 11 not-for-profits that we partner with to feed those with insecurity across the state as well. So here you can see a recap of the PPE. We have now delivered and donated over 1.2 million, over 1.25 million PPE. 400,000 of those are FDA certified N95 respirator masks, and then also up to almost 800,000 of additional pieces of PPE that include the gowns, face shields. We have a lot, so goggles and so forth. So like I described, we still have 700,000 N95 NIOSH respirators arriving over the next few weeks as well. And now you'll see, this is our full list of alliance partners. And you can see that the span is truly local and local to global, beginning there with our New Canaan Emergency Management team, and then through XJ Group in China. And here is our commons as it was normally operating. So now we've converted our commons and our whole kitchen team to now we've now distributed 10,000 meals that we've donated to those in need in the last 7 weeks. We have also dedicated 8 of our team to work 35-hour weeks or more to prepare these meals and deliver fresh produce. And soon we'll have some from our own garden. We're starting to work in our own garden as well. And you'll see here on the right, those are the prepared meals, and the left is the produce. And we are focusing on serving the homeless, and working poor, elderly, those facing domestic violence, and newly settled refugees and immigrants. So you can see here, these are our partners that we've been working with for some time. And that enabled us to be able to, again, know our neighbor better, and really, again, these are trusted relationships that we could go back to and determine where the highest and greatest needs are and how much they needed. So we do expect this food relief to grow in the coming months, and we are committed to continuing that. It's a very important part of our relief effort. So as we actually talk about getting the PPE, this is a great picture, Rod. It's one thing to procure it overseas, and another thing to actually get it into the hands of those who need it. So I'd like to introduce Rod, our Chief Accountability Officer and Justice Initiative Director. He has created the logistics infrastructure that has ensured smooth passage, quality control, and efficient delivery. So Rod, you've been a linchpin of this operation. How has your Justice Initiative experience within law enforcement, municipalities, and even in transnational borders applied to our current PPE mission? Rod. There you are.
Here I am. I'm trying to see to how it is. Okay, yes, I'm in. Thank you, Sharon. Yes, as you all know, this incredible mission was put in place when Sharon made the commitment to help. And she rallied the organization behind her. So we knew at this point the need of the PPEs were going to be there. So since mid-March, I got to tell you, it's been really a race to save lives by procuring the needed PPEs. It was a challenge, but we were able to secure substantial amounts of supply for our front lines. So far, I got to tell you, we've been involved in logistically moving close to 1.5 million PPEs. So, and while we're talking, this is happening right now. We are, while we are talking here, we have our own trucks currently delivering and donating PPEs to health centers in Harford County. So we're talking, but we have all our staff already working and donating. So some of you already know, prior to joining Grace Farms Foundation in late 2015, I served as a special agent with the United States Customs Service, and then subsequently with the Department of Homeland Security investigations. So throughout my career as a federal law enforcement agent, I've been dealing with a lot of supply chains and how to disrupt them in combating transnational organized crime involving all types of crime like child exploitation, human trafficking, terrorism, narcotics, and so forth. So needless to say, I spent a lot of time overseas on assignment working with U.S. embassies and foreign government. So I did acquire expertise in understanding how to combat organized crimes across borders by disrupting really the illicit supply chains. So part of my job at Grace Farms Foundation, in coordination with some federal agencies, is really to oversee and conduct trainings of law enforcement and social service providers in the United States and also from many other countries on really how to communicate across borders, how to conduct successful investigation, and how to prosecute successfully international criminal enterprises. So also as Grace Farms Foundation's Chief Accountability Officer and Justice Initiative Director, I'm also responsible for our local global programs with the mission to end modern-day slavery, gender-based violence, and environmental crimes. So we do this through training, on-the-job training at the local, national, and global level, also through policy and advocacy. So it's all about, to us, it's all about disrupting illicit supply chain and predicting where will be the next one. So how can I say, I really never expected that my knowledge on dealing with supply chain would really help procure and safely deliver medical equipment. So it was really great. It was really,
and that was a surprise, but
yes.
I think it's exactly, but I think it'd be helpful for people to understand using your knowledge. Once we were able to place those orders with XJ and, starting, then there's a whole process to actually bring the PPE back. And it was really predicated on your ability to understand how to go through the whole quality control, inspection, labeling. There's a lot that goes into this, and it still dovetails quite nice, like with these trusted relationships. So why don't you give us a little bit of background on that?
Yeah, so really my days with the U.S. Customs Service helped a little bit. So, I got to tell you, the landscape of international logistics during this major health crisis was not an easy one. It's not an easy one. I mean, it changes on a daily basis, sometimes hourly. You never know what regulations are going to be imposed in China. So you don't know. So we started really receiving shipments at the end of March, towards the end of March, via UPS, FedEx, and then we switched to air cargo. Now we are looking and using charter plane to get those PPEs because there's so much going on in China. So, I mean, we have drivers waiting outside the factories for days, sometimes weeks, before being able to get those PPEs out of the factory. And then you have to deal with also unexpected issues with the international movement of these types of commodities. So, like I said, the logistics was constantly changing. And based on the number of PPEs we're able to get, that's when we set up our logistics. So it's not something stable. It's always moving, moving, and moving. So really, so we try to get what we can. So also, one of the most crucial things that we have done also that's so important, like even working with the XJ, is really the quality control.
Mm-hmm.
Quality control. Most organizations couldn't ensure the quality of PPEs until it gets here. So how do we do this? How we were able to do this so efficiently in the same in a really trusted manner by trusted relationships with manufacturers, doing the quality control on the product before we get it. So we already had it there being inspected. Through my customs days, really understand the transaction across borders and how we can get those PPEs more quickly. Also relationships, huge relationship network, credible supply chain partners. So we really mitigated our risks. And we started also, keep in mind, we started looking at this early enough that gives us a little edge. And we knew that we were facing a major national health crisis. So we felt comfortable, once we felt comfortable with the established supply chain, so we made the decision to pay and we got the PPEs. So the PPEs were inspected by the Chinese customs, being also inspected by the FDA. So we worked with my former sister agency, the Customs and Border Protection. So we worked with all of them and we worked with all our freight forwarders. And I tell you, it's been amazing in reaching out to our network of colleagues and former colleagues and working with them in getting this done. So
right, and also just something even, it might seem minor, but ensuring that everything was labeled correctly, that it was labeled correctly, that it was for donation and for the humanitarian purpose that it is, the charitable purpose. So once it arrived, then that was getting it to our borders. Once it arrived, then we also had the challenge of, and really that was just our aim, was to be able to turn around that PPE within hours so that it could be indeed be life-saving as it was meant to be. Everybody's hundreds of people, effort to put into this. We want to make sure there's a quick turnaround. So again, it was the Buchanan Fire Department, the emergency management team there that could in one night deliver all through Fairfield County. So this is our Fairfield County, which is the epicenter originally. And then as it fanned out, went to 23 towns. So you have 23 towns thereafter that we were able to supply to. And then beyond Fairfield County, because they were first responders themselves, they couldn't go beyond that range. Then Rod has led a team within our own team to then, it's been great that we've had other volunteers. We had different hardware stores and our local Chevrolet dealer also supply, whether it be semi-trucks and vans for us then to use and donate like we are today to Hartford, the state of Hartford. So this is also interesting, our distributions of PPE by type and day. You can see a spike is in the middle of April, so that we had a variety of PPE coming in at different times. And also there's a whole nother backstory of determining which PPE were the most critical. And again, what we did decide is to stay within the technical range, to stay within the N95s, knowing how technical they are and difficult. But we also had another range of offerings as well that we were able to ascertain. So again, here we are back at Grace Farms, our new hub. And we are grateful, so grateful to our frontline heroes. This is forever going to really become a part of our DNA at Grace Farms. Not that we've changed our aim, it's deepened our ability to really know our neighbor. We appreciate, there's been hundreds of people involved. So thank you, and I hope we're on the call as well. You'll think about ways you can add more horsepower. And why don't I then, and also before I even say, when we're pass it over to Chelsea, again, thank you to everyone on the call, Theresa and Brian and so forth, to be able to make this all work. You can see it really takes everyone. So Chelsea, do you want to take it from here with a few questions?
Absolutely. Thank you so much to everybody who has given us moments to share our story. This is something, as you can see, that is local to global. And a number of the questions I'm getting coming in are really about how can I help? And that is just so amazing about you, our Grace Farms Foundation community and beyond. There are two ways. I'm a marketing person. There's two ways you can help. One is to help spread the word. So we have our handle here at Grace Farms CT. We're on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. One of the most important ways that we've been able to ascertain real-time feedback on the needs across our state is actually through social media and people filling in PPE forms from there on what the needs are. Also making a meaningful gift. If you have capacity, if your colleague at work does, if your boss does, if you're part of a foundation or you yourself have the opportunity to give, this opportunity, as you see, is a life-saving mission, and 100% of your donation goes to the actual cost of the food or the PPE so that we can continue adding momentum to this work. Sharon may note that we expect that this food work is going to continue for a long time to come, and that the PPE is still a dire situation. Thank you so much for spending your time with us this afternoon. This is an amazing opportunity to get to connect with you when we so often are connecting together on site. So we wish you health, we wish you peace during this uncertain time, and thank you for linking arms with us in this endeavor.